folks, welcome to Beyond the Lines. My name is Sarah, I'm the artist behind Pinselgeschichten, and today I'm gonna color again with orange. It's the last episode for the orange. Next week I'm gonna have a 3 marker challenge. Hubby did take the markers out of the pot, so next week I'm gonna have something different coming up. But oranges are going to be done by today. I used all of the supplies that I have, and I told you different ways that I work with when it comes to coloring with orange and what I like about a certain medium and what I take as an advantage from how the media works. Today I'm working in this tiny book again. And I'm working with Tombow markers and the Faber-Castell Pit brush pens. And I'm having warm orange and cold orange, having these 2 goldfish here. And I show you how I get that gradient shading going on the fish's main body and also on the fins here. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was a very, very quick process, because one thing that I find when working with Tombow markers on rather big surfaces like those fish, you gotta work really quickly to use the liquefying thing as a benefit or as an advantage to your coloring. Hence the video is not very long, but yeah, I just wanted to show you that part of my stash of orange colors for coloring books as well. I hope you enjoy watching this. Like I said, next week I'm going to have a 3 marker challenge, so it's not going to be a particular color that I'm going to work with, but more of a something is thrown at me and I gotta work with it and make it work. So that's what's gonna come up next week. And after that, my video series coloring countdown to Christmas will start. So Beyond the Lines will only pick up in first week of 2017 again. And yeah, until then there's lots of coloring. Like if you come here for the coloring, not necessarily for my own paintings, but for seeing how I color, you will have 2 months of woo-ha! Lots of coloring going on. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's see what I did with the goldfish, and if you have any questions or comments, let me know. So like I said in the intro, I'm gonna work with Indian ink markers today. So I got 2 different ones, the Tombow markers and the Faber-Castells. Difference is that you can liquefy the Tombows and use them like watercolor. And you cannot do that with the Faber-Castells. So what I'm gonna do today, just to change things up a bit, I'm gonna use the Tombows in both like liquefied and not liquefied ways, and the other one, so I'm gonna color those 2 fish, and the other one I will have liquefied Tombows and those. So one of the fish has just the Tombows liquefied and not liquefied, and the other one has the Tombows liquefied and the Faber-Castells on top. That's at least the plan. And I'm going to have these 2 Tombows for the upper one and these 2 Tombows for the lower one, just to, well, change things up a bit, like I said. And there's from light to dark, or yellow to most reddish. That's the difference there when it comes to the colors. So this is for the Faber-Castell. This is the warm orange. This is more almost like a cold orange. So it's very distinct here. Here, not so much. This would be more the colder one. This would be the warm oranges, but the difference is not as intense as it is with the Faber-Castells. But let's get started. I'm just gonna go in with a brush marker and go for the sections that I want to have colored with the lightest color, and I'm not gonna take care of the patterns in the fish at all. Just gonna give him quite a bit of color here. And I'm gonna fade those colors out with the water. Now I have to be fairly quick because the ink pretty much sucks into the paper, and then it's really difficult to liquefy them, like all of these bits and pieces. So I'm just very quickly giving this a go here, and then I'm gonna take my water brush to it and start liquefying. It's very subtle what you can pull on that kind of paper here. On watercolor paper you can really pull the ink and color with those markers like with the watercolors. It's way less inky in this section here, or on this paper here, because this is not watercolor paper and it peels quite a bit. Okay, but I have to work super fast. That's also why I'm not caring about if I color outside the lines. I will clean that up with a permanent marker later. But for now I have to get the water onto the paper super quickly so that I can pull the ink as much as I can. That helps a bit with not having the fish look flat, because while you're pulling the pigment, like I said, so it already gives automatically a bit of depth there. But still, this still looks kind of flat. So I'm going to do the same thing to the other fish here and take what I had as the darkest color for the lights now. I'm going to use the third orange, the one that I hadn't used yet, the darkest one, as the darks in that fishy here, the goldfish. Okay, very quickly applying the color. It really helps if you know where you want to have your lights and your shadows. You can hardly see the difference here between the two markers, but you can see it here. So there's the difference between the two markers. When you have them next to each other, you can see the difference. Quickly liquefy. It's way more yellowish than the other orange that I used for the shading here. You can see it's almost like either a peach or almost a skin tone kind of a color. But that is what cold oranges do look like, and I like to have them mixed with the warm oranges because you have a tiny bit of yellow, a tiny bit of a skin tone or a rose color. It's a very nice color for under painting or under drawings, like you have those as the background color, or like the color underneath and have a very intense other color, a brown or maybe an indigo or a green or whatever on top, and intensify certain things. So that's it for the tombos now. Now I have to dry this one, and I'm gonna use my hairdryer because I don't wanna keep you longer on this video and steal your time than I have to. Okay, that is super dry. The acrylic block underneath actually helps, not with bleeding on this part here, but with drying everything then. I only use liquid tombos on pages where I don't want to use the other page. The Faber-Castells do not bleed through here. So let's go into the details with the Faber-Castells. Let's work with the lighter orange first, and I'm just gonna feather in a bit of that color. I like to use the Faber-Castells if I, especially these pit brush pens here, if I wanna have these tiny patterns in coloring pages be solidly colored without any bleeding or anything. I really like to work with them to have a solid, nicely inked line. Just going forward. Coloring pieces, and I'm just going, I'm not having any rhyme or reason per se, like where I put down those details. It's more like, oh, where do I want to have color intensified? Because I want to keep that from light to dark shading that I do have on this piece here with the tombos, but I want to have some color stand out for the patterns and just intensify them. So I'm going into those areas where I think, that would be maybe kind of nice. And it's usually either a very prominent pattern or a very prominent shade or something where I say, that would be kind of cool to have that pattern stand out a bit more or have just a tiny color change there. And again, like I said, I don't care about cleaning up the edges yet or having the tombos bleed, because I will use a black marker later to broaden the outlines of the fish. And then you cannot see that some of the color bled outside the lines. Okay. Now go in with a cold orange. Have some of the darks come in, and I'm either going with a solid line or I'm feathering, depending on what I want to do. Do I want to have something to stand out, or do I want to feather? Like in this case here, just intensifying shadow. There I want something to stand out. Feathering again. Some more feathering. I'm just staying in the darkest areas of the fish where I want to have the shadow going on with that cold orange, or where something like is supposed to really pop, like this fin here on top. That is supposed to pop, but still I'm working with the shadow here. Just intensifying a bit of pattern here. And that one as well. And go in with the warm orange to intensify that line here. Again, feathering going on. It's a bit more controllable than the liquefied tombos are. Excuse me. Which is just a nice thing. Oh, I wanna intensify or shade the lower parts of these petals here. Just a tiny bit. All right. That's that, and now I'm gonna go in with the tombos on the lower fish. And I'm taking the darkest first. Since I use the darker colors also on that lower fish here, it's gonna be a bit more difficult to shade, but that is the point where I just have to intensify colors. I could either work with the bull pen or the brush pen, whatever suits me better. Okay. I'm doing almost the same thing then with the upper fish, but not exactly the same thing. I don't want to have them look like clones. But I don't want them to look super weird either, because it's still one piece, one drawing, coloring, whatever you want to call it. So there should be some repetition in there for it to look harmonic to the eye in the end. You can see already that because I used the darkest orange, that is the cold orange, the lower fish looks very different than the upper fish. And it's actually pretty cool. I like these kinds of effects. You can really play with them when you're coloring things or drawing things and you want to work with a limited color palette there. Really makes for very nice effects to have something of the same main color. but have variation in cold tones or warm tones being the main color. That really, well, just gives a nice effect, and it changes things up a bit. Intensifying those, having a bit more shadow on these tiny fins up here, down here, not up, down. Intensifying shading on these fins. I'm working with the darkest orange here. Okay, so you can see this is way more yellowish than this one is. Have to close those pens. And now I'm gonna take a black pick pen and just clean up the line work. The sections where I didn't mess up with the coloring, like not going out of the lines at all, I'm gonna keep those cleanup lines a bit thinner, but I'm still gonna go over those sections just to have the same black as an outline. But like back here, there's no screw ups, so I'm just going over the printed lines instead of making them wider like I do here. Okay, so that is pretty much the outline. What I now want to do is just intensify the lines of the belly, just to not lose that shape. Also the same with the fins on the lower part. Well, here you can actually see them quite nicely, but still. All right, now I'm just gonna go in with a tiny bit of a white gel pen to have the eyes actually look like eyes and not like flowers so much. Okay, for the midpoint I'm gonna take the gel pen. For the reflection here I'm gonna take a permanent marker in white, just because it's bigger, makes things a bit more easy. So I'm just coloring the highlight white, which is like 2.5 petals. That's already actually it. So with the Indian ink markers, especially if you have the Tombows, you can have super nice effects with just using 2 tones per fish by liquefying it. It's very much like watercolors, but you can control it way more because you place down the ink on dry paper and then you just fan it out with a tiny bit of water. If you're, however, more the dry Indian ink marker person, you can do the same thing, just maybe not too white, or you would need to have a very light skin tone maybe. But you can have very intense colors, like with this fish down here. This section is very intense. This is as well. So you can have very brilliant and very nice effects, very well, pop art manga-ish kind of effects or illustrations. They are very bright and very vibrant, those markers. So if you want to have something subtle, you either have to really choose a subtle color, like for example the skin tones of the Faber-Castells, or you maybe want to go for the very bright and very vibrant colors and leave the subtle colors for the colored pencils or watercolors, or something where you maybe want to go more pastel than with Indian ink markers. But yeah, this is just a very quick demonstration on how I work with Indian ink markers. I really like to combine the Tombows with the Faber-Castells because they do give a watercolor relook if I liquefy them, which is a feature I really like with the Tombows. But I can have very controlled colored sections as well with using the Faber-Castell pit brush pens, and they're so close in the tones that I always find a Tombow for the Faber-Castells and vice versa, so I can always work in combination. And in future weeks where I do have these markers as a combination, like Faber-Castells and Tombows, I show you oh, that's my coffee machine. All right, machine is now sleeping. So in future weeks, I will show you other ways to color with Indian ink markers. I showed you at the crab already and at the elephant how I work with layering with just the Faber-Castells, but I'm gonna go in depth about that a bit more and show you a bit more different ways that I like to use Indian markers for in different artwork kind of things, depending on what style I'm going for. Anyway, I'm rambling. I thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. If you want to know the exact numbers or names of those markers that I used in combination here, check out my webpage tomorrow. There's a blog post about all the artwork that I published this week, and this piece and this information are part of that blog post. You can also see close-up photos and stuff, so hop on over in case you're interested. And I will see you on the next video. It's gonna be, if I remember, yeah, it should be one of the challenges. So I thought up some challenges for myself just to split things up and not have the same concept over and over again over every week, but have a bit more change on the short terms and then have repetition in the block things, like repeating the same format for different kinds of colors, but once in a while breaking things up a bit. So that's gonna happen next week. I thank you very much for watching. Do all the good YouTube stuff, like, share, subscribe if you feel like it. It would be very helpful and I would really appreciate that. And have a lovely day. Go create something, go color, try out just working with orange Indian markers. It's cool. Have fun, everybody. Bye.